So I want you to just sit with this sentence for a second. The quote is, your religion is in how you act. And it
Hmm.
doesn't say, your religion is in what you fundamentally believe deep down. It doesn't say it's in your quarterly numbers or your perfectly crafted 5-year plan. It says your religion is in the exact texture, the exact presence of how you live an ordinary Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it is a totally uncompromising standard when you really absorb it,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Totally.
Because it just strips away all of our comfortable hiding places.
Yeah.
We all have these grand intentions, the philosophies we privately hold but maybe never actually act on. But this idea insists that the sacred isn't just some abstract thought. It is something you physically enact in the real world.
Okay, let's unpack this because that tension right there is really the core of our deep dive today. We're exploring a really fascinating collection of source material from April 2026, and it tries to solve a problem that, I mean, almost all of us
The big
face.
one.
Right. How do you actually live and work at an incredibly high level without losing your soul or, your sanity in the process? And our mission today is to essentially give you a shortcut. We want to synthesize these worlds of philosophy, sports, business, and poetry to discover the secret to something called effortless action.
Yeah.
Basically, being highly effective without the burnout.
Which is really the modern holy grail, isn't it? Because right out of the gate in these sources, we're hit with this massive collision between um, relentless hustle culture on one hand and quiet mindfulness on the other. And they seem, well, totally incompatible.
They really do. I mean, let's look at the hustle side first. We have Mike Rowe, the dirty jobs guy,
Oh, right.
and his famous SWEAT pledge. SWEAT standing for skill and work ethic aren't taboo. It's just this aggressively industrious manifesto. It demands that you show up early, stay late, and actively volunteer for the absolute worst tasks available.
Yeah, so very much about brute forcing your way through resistance. And Roe was actually in very good historical company there. I mean, Julius Caesar had a similar incredibly blunt view. He basically said experience is the teacher of all things.
Right.
The underlying mechanism there is that you simply cannot learn the nature of reality from things you avoid doing. Like theory is useless without friction.
Yeah.
And then you have the Roman philosopher Seneca with that maxim, fac si facturus eris.
Which means what exactly?
It translates essentially to do it if you're going to do it. It's just a complete rejection of perpetual preparation. Like at some point, you have to stop planning and just act.
Okay, so that's the side of the ring telling you to be a shark, right? If you start swimming, you die.
Mm-hmm.
But in the other corner, we have these really profound voices of quietness, like the educator Parker Palmer, who argues that our primary task in life isn't to constantly do more, but to actually listen more. And then the mindfulness teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, makes this piercing observation that we're exceptionally good at preparing to live, but terrible at actual living. He points out that we treat the present moment merely as a waiting room for the future.
And that waiting room concept is vital to understand. I mean, think about how often we use the present just as a stepping stone. We endure Monday through Thursday just to get to Friday.
Oh, all the time.
Right. Or we suffer through 5 years of a grueling job just to get the title change. And when you live that way, the present moment has no inherent value. It's just an obstacle in your way.
Which is such a convicting feeling for anyone with a calendar full of back-to-back meetings. But for you listening right now, this probably feels like an impossible paradox. Like, do you have to choose between being that relentless corporate shark or being a monk meditating silently on a mountain? How can you possibly have both?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the resolution to this false tug of war actually comes from Mike Rowe himself.
Really? The dirty jobs guy?
Yeah, exactly. Right in the middle of that manifesto about grueling hard work, Rowe provides the key. He says, I do not follow my passion, I bring it with me.
Oh, wow. That completely flips the script.
It really does.
Because we usually think of passion as this magical weather system, like we have to wait for the storm to hit before we can do good work.
Exactly. The tension between doing and being is a false dichotomy. Presence doesn't stop action. Presence is the very thing that enables high-level action.
Right.
When you're fully inside whatever mundane task you're doing, when you bring your passion into the room with you rather than waiting to feel inspired, the intense effort becomes absorbed into the act itself. You aren't fighting the moment. You're inhabiting it.
So if we accept that bringing presence to our action is like the secret sauce, what does that actually look like in practice? Like, how do we move from this neat philosophical theory to the actual aesthetics of mastery? What does it look like when someone is doing this perfectly?
Well, to understand the visual of this, we have to look at a concept from the Renaissance. The author Robert Greene references a 1528 masterwork by Baldassare Castiglione
Okay.
called The Book of the Courtier. And Castiglione coined a specific term for this state of effortless mastery. He called it sprezzatura.
Sprezzatura, I mean, it's one of those words that just sounds inherently cool, but what is the actual mechanism of it?
Sprezzatura is a specific kind of calculated nonchalance. It's the ability to conceal all the artistry, all the sweat, and all the hard work beneath the surface.
Right.
It's the capacity to execute incredibly complex, highly difficult things and make them look entirely natural,
Yeah.
almost accidental, like you aren't even trying.
The historical examples we found for this are just fantastic. Like, take Michelangelo. He would literally forbid popes from coming into his workspace to watch him paint.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a matter of protecting his trade secrets. He knew that if the Pope saw him covered in sweat, swearing, dealing with messy plaster up on a rickety scaffolding, it would destroy the magic of the final piece. He wanted the mastery to look like it just spontaneously flowed out of nature itself. I mean, just imagine the Pope as your ultimate micromanager boss, and you just lock the door on him so he thinks you're a wizard.
It's such a great image. And, the poet William Butler Yeats applied the exact same standard to writing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeats noted that a single line of poetry might take hours of agonizing, frustrating labor to get right. But, he said, if the final result doesn't seem like the spontaneous thought of a single moment, then all that stitching and unstitching was for nothing. The labor has to become invisible.
See, I'm trying to square this with modern culture, though, because when I hear make it look easy and conceal the effort, my brain immediately goes to Instagram.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
How is sprezzatura any different from just faking it? I mean, we see people spending 3 hours setting up lighting to take a photo that says, oops, just woke up like this. Isn't sprezzatura just the 16th century version of an Instagram filter?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, sprezzatura is the exact opposite of a social media filter.
Okay, how so?
A filter is a performance you layer over reality to hide the fact that you lack mastery. Sprezzatura is not a performance. It is the ultimate reward of intense, grueling preparation. It's what happens when you have practiced a skill so thoroughly and internalized it so deeply that the preparation itself eventually dissolves into pure grace.
So you don't perform the ease, you earn the ease through thousands of unseen reps. The effort becomes invisible because it's literally become muscle memory.
Precisely. You aren't faking the nonchalance. You possess it because you've mastered the variables.
That brings up a massive roadblock, though. What shatters that earned effortless grace? If sprezzatura is our goal, we need to know the enemy.
Right.
And our source material identifies the culprit very clearly. It's worry, it's a desperate illusion of control. You cannot act with any kind of grace or presence if you're completely paralyzed by the fear of an unknown future.
Yeah, and to really dissect how worry destroys action, we look at the reflections of NFL Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy. He writes about the biblical passage, Philippians 4:6-7, and points out a very specific psychological mechanism. Worry doesn't just sap our physical energy. It drains us of hope. It shifts our brain's focus entirely to threat detection.
Wow.
And Dungy's concrete antidote to this paralysis is to stop and systematically count your blessings.
Okay, I have to admit, when I first hear count your blessings in a high-stakes leadership context, it sounds a bit like a cheesy, inspirational poster. Like, how does that practically solve a crisis?
I know, it sounds totally cliche until you look at what it's doing cognitively. When you're panicked about the future, your brain is just spinning out disastrous hypotheticals.
Right.
By forcing yourself to return your attention to what has already been done, to your actual history of surviving past crises and finding success, you ground yourself in empirical reality. It literally pulls you out of the fear center of your brain.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And Dungy clarifies that the reward for this practice isn't that you magically get the outcome you want. The reward is a piece that exceeds anything we can understand. A deep settledness beneath the surface turbulence.
I love that visual of settledness beneath the turbulence. It pairs beautifully with an anonymous quote we pulled about fear. The idea is that fear is actually a biological gift in many cases. It's an alarm bell telling you what might go wrong. But fear must never be allowed to escalate into panic. When you panic, your vision narrows. The rule is you focus on what you can control because you always have options.
Yes, and that psychological shift leads directly to a fascinating story Oz Hillman tells in his golf memoir. He references the ancient story of Moses at the Red Sea from Exodus 14.
Oh, right.
Paint the picture here. Moses and hundreds of thousands of Israelites are physically trapped. A heavily armed Egyptian army is bearing down on them from behind, and a completely uncrossable sea is blocking them in front.
Total nightmare scenario.
Exactly. And Moses does what any of us would do. He cries out in absolute panic.
And the response he gets is so counterintuitive. Because God doesn't hand Moses a detailed 5-point strategic plan. He doesn't even offer immediate reassurance like, hey, relax, I'm about to part this water for you. The response is almost blunt. Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on.
Move on. Just take the step forward.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because we all deal with this paralysis. I used to think worry was somewhat productive, but worry is actually like sitting in your driveway, terrified of traffic, and obsessively recalculating the GPS route over and over again on your phone.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. You feel like you're problem solving, you feel highly engaged with the issue, but your car is still in park. You are getting absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
But if you're the listener right now and you've got your own metaphorical Egyptian army breathing down your neck, maybe it's a failing project at work, a sudden health crisis, or a financial cliff, how do you actually take the car out of park and move on when the road ahead is invisible?
You do it by recognizing the deception of worry. Worry is essentially a highly sophisticated form of paralysis that masquerades as prudence. We trick ourselves into thinking that by agonizing over a decision, we are being responsible adults.
Oof, yeah.
But in reality, we're just refusing to step into the water. The profound truth embedded in the Moses story and in high-level leadership is that the path does not open before you step. The path only reveals itself after you commit and take the first step into the water.
So action precedes clarity.
Exactly. You have to move in the absence of certainty.
That requires an immense amount of internal trust. Because you can't just bravely march forward into the dark with zero direction. You need an incredibly accurate inner compass to tell you which way forward actually is.
Right.
And to build that compass, you need radical, totally uncorrupted self-knowledge. Which brings us to a fascinating pairing we found in the sources. The physicist Richard Feynman and the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron.
It is a brilliant juxtaposition. Richard Feynman, the Nobel laureate, had one golden rule for his scientific work in his life: do not fool myself. But he immediately attached a crucial caveat to that rule. He said, recognize that I am the easiest person to fool.
That's so true. Human beings have an infinite capacity to rationalize our own bad behavior and flawed logic.
We really do. We can't justify anything if we want it badly enough. But applying Feynman's rigorous logic to our inner lives can be brutal, which is why Pema Chodron's perspective is the necessary counterweight.
Right.
She argues that we must have the courage to look at ourselves honestly and gently. Both words carry equal weight.
That pairing is absolutely vital. Think about the mechanism of self-reflection. If you apply Feynman's rule, don't fool myself, but you do it without gentleness, it devolves into merciless self-prosecution. You just end up beating yourself up for every flaw, every mistake. Chodron warns that if we try to build armor against our own psychological pain, we just end up imprisoning the softness of our hearts.
Yeah, but I can hear a skeptical listener raising an eyebrow at that, though, because gentleness has been somewhat weaponized in modern self-care culture.
Oh, 100%.
Where is the line between being genuinely gentle with yourself and just using gentleness as a convenient excuse to avoid accountability? You know, the attitude of, well, I totally dropped the ball on my team, but I'm just holding space and being gentle with myself today.
Yeah, and that is the danger of leaning on one concept without the other. It's a self-correcting system. Honesty without gentleness is cruelty, but gentleness without honesty is pure delusion.
Wow, yeah.
You aren't letting yourself off the hook. As Parker Palmer notes, the inner voice tells you what is persistently, unmistakably true about your life, not what looks good on your resume or what justifies your mistakes. You have to be gentle enough to strip away the defenses and let that quiet voice speak, but honest enough to actually obey what it tells you, even when it's inconvenient.
And if we refuse to do that private, uncomfortable work of honest and gentle self-evaluation, the consequences don't stay private for long.
No, they don't.
They bleed out into the public sphere very quickly. This scales up to a societal level, which is perfectly captured by the management consultant Peter Drucker.
Oh, yes.
Drucker observed decades of economic cycles, and he made a very dry, very sharp observation based on his time covering insurance fraud trials back in the 1930s. He noted simply, every boom puts crooks in at the top.
That is such a chilling reality. Prosperity doesn't inherently create greed, it just provides spectacular camouflage for it.
Hmm.
When the company is growing at 30% a year and the stock price is soaring, everyone looks like a visionary genius. Nobody stops to audit the ethics or the internal culture because the outward results are just so intoxicating.
Exactly. It's Feynman's principle applied to massive corporations. Institutions are the absolute easiest things for the people inside them to fool. When there is no gentle honesty, the entire system becomes performative.
We have some incredible insights on this specific danger of performing rather than living truthfully. Minna Antrim observed that flattery often acts as a mask for secret contempt. John Wooden, the legendary basketball coach, boiled his leadership philosophy down to be true to yourself, be true to those you lead. Because if you haven't done the self-examination, you will inevitably project your own unexamined fears onto your team.
Absolutely.
And my favorite might be from the actor Christopher Walken, of all people, who bluntly stated, if you knew how quickly people forget the dead, you would stop living to impress people.
This raises an important question. If the audience we're exhausting ourselves to perform for barely even remembers we exist, how do we dismantle this intoxicating cycle of worry, performance, and self-deception? How do we get back to that state of effortless action?
Well, the sources offer us an ultimate synthesis for this. Action, presence, courage, honesty, they all converge in a single master metaphor that ties everything we've discussed into one visual. And that element is water, the art of living like water.
Let's examine why water is the perfect metaphor here. Think about its physical properties. Water doesn't worry about the rocks in its path. It doesn't force outcomes. It naturally finds its level, which is a perfect physical representation of honesty. It reflects light without distorting it. It simply adapts to the reality of its environment while maintaining its fundamental nature.
And the material Ively lays out 5 practical weekly commitments to help practice this. It's almost a curriculum for training yourself to flow.
Okay.
Number 1, give someone your undivided presence.
Which is incredibly hard these days.
Oh, nearly impossible. Number 2, sit with something unresolved without immediately trying to force it open or fix it.
Right.
Number 3, deliberately notice ordinary beauty and stop for it. Number 4, say one true thing you have been holding back out of fear. And number 5, treat your own process of becoming with patience.
Notice that none of those are productivity hacks. You can't put them on a spreadsheet. They are practices of being deeply present. The poet Wendell Berry captures this feeling beautifully in The Peace of Wild Things. He writes about physically going to rest where the wood drake rests on the water, escaping the anxiety of the future, completely free from the forethought of grief.
And then George Raveling brings in a famous quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson to push this metaphor to its logical conclusion. Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. That is the exact mechanism of water.
Yeah.
It doesn't follow a pre-made safe concrete channel. It carves the riverbed simply by flowing persistently over the terrain it finds itself in.
And that persistence, the quiet, unyielding flow of water, is indistinguishable from grace.
So what does this all mean? Let me give you an image to hold on to as we wrap up. Water seems like the most yielding, soft, passive substance in the world. You can push your hand right through it. And yet, it is the most persistently destructive, transformative force on planet Earth. Water literally carved the Grand Canyon. It didn't do it through sudden violence. It didn't do it through panic or worry or forcing a 5-year plan onto the desert. It carved solid rock through pure presence and relentless persistence, finding its level, trusting gravity, and just flowing.
Which brings our entire journey full circle today. True religion, the actual physical enactment of what you value in your daily life, isn't about frantic, fear-driven productivity.
No.
It's the long, patient effort to do the quiet interior work. You have to face your fears, count your historical blessings to ground yourself, and rigorously stop fooling yourself. Only when that inner compass is set can you act fully, truly, and effortlessly. As Seneca advised centuries ago, do it if you are going to do it, but first listen, and before you listen, be still.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today as you step back into your routine. Think about the single biggest, most frustrating obstacle in your career or your personal life right now, the one keeping you up at night. Are you currently trying to smash your way through it like a hammer? Because what would happen tomorrow if, instead of forcing the outcome, panicking, and recalculating the route in your driveway, you decided to act like water? What if you just float around the edges of the problem, filled in the gaps, found your natural, honest level, and let time and persistent grace do the heavy lifting? Because in the end, your religion is in how you act. See you next time.